Good afternoon and welcome to the MCG at Stumps on day 4 of the 4th test of the border-gavaskar trophy at the MCG, the Cauldron, the Colossus, the Colosseum. I'm Izzy Westbury, this is Callum Ferguson, and another brilliant day that's set up, well, without any real weather interruption throughout the last 4 days. An intriguing final day tomorrow. Cal, what was your highlight of this 4th day?
Oh, look, I think my highlight's going to be Nathan Lyon's highest test score. It's such an important moment in such a pivotal test match, in such a big series. I think the way he and Scott Boland navigated the back end of that day, quite incredible in the face of such a high-pressure situation. To sneak Australia out towards a 330-run lead is just an extraordinary performance. That's my highlight for the day, in and amongst what was an incredible day and so many highlights.
And that partnership, I mean, Lyon 41 unbeaten, Boland 10 unbeaten, a 55-run partnership. They came together when the lead was at 278, and the lead now is at 333. I think we've got a few gents here. We're doing something.
We do.
Thank you very much.
Cam Ferguson, absolute legend.
He is an absolute legend, and I tell him that often.
Thank you, mate.
Son,
Hi, buddy.
loves the Sydney Thunder.
Good on you, mate. Well done. I hope you enjoyed your day today.
Absolute bloody legend here, Daddy. Cam Ferguson scores a million runs.
Have a lovely,
Thanks, buddy.
lovely afternoon. One of
Yes.
Cal's many, many fans. It happens often. This is one of the perils of filming out here, because Cal is certainly a crowd favourite.
Thanks, Izzy.
Where were we? Yes, Nathan Lyon. We'll talk about another crowd favourite, because he
Yes.
certainly was in Bay 13 towards the end of the
Wasn't he
day's
just?
play. That was sunny, it was inebriated, there were a lot of very fair skin tones out there as well.
Yes.
But yeah, 55-run partnership, Nathan Lyon's top score. Your moment of the day was that. I'm going to go on a slightly different tack, because Jasprit Bumrah,
Oh, wow.
he got his 200th test wicket. He's now on 29
Yes.
for the series so far, which is extraordinary. One test still to go.
Yeah.
But what I really liked was the fact that he got 200 test wickets, the first bowler to do it at an average below 20. So ahead of Malcolm Marshall, Curtly Ambrose, Joel Garner, Fred Truman. I mean, this is ridiculous stakes, and I still feel as though he's got years and years and years left in his career. I can't think of more superlative words to describe Bumrah and still think of what we have left in store from him.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. I think we've used up all the superlatives over this series so far. You've just got to think that we're very privileged to be witnessing it up close and personal
I think that's
in
right,
this series, because what we're seeing is something we've never seen before. He's breaking records left, right and centre, and he's really keeping this Indian side in the series. He's carrying this bowling attack on his shoulders. We see a much more even spread, I think, amongst the Australian bowlers, but with Jasprit through most of the series, it's been on him. And it's been when he's had the ball where Australia have looked vulnerable. And again, today, he was unplayable through periods of the day and just showed his class. He's bowled so many overs through the series. He just keeps coming, Izzy.
And what I thought actually was quite remarkable, the last over of the day, he thought that he had Nathan Lyon caught behind. And then the replay came back to show that it was a no ball. So there must be quite a few of those in his career where he's got a wicket, and with the modern technology, it picks up the no balls, which it wouldn't have in the days of the Great West Indies, etc. Anyway.
I think it showed that he was human, though.
Oh,
he
yeah,
really hasn't made a lot of mistakes,
absolutely.
even as captain or as a bowler. It's incredible to think that this is one of his first missteps.
So is that a big Willow Talk reveal? Jasprit Bumrah, he is mortal.
He's human.
Well, wrapping up the scores then, so I'll go through a little summary of the day. India started the day on 9 for 358, added a further 11 runs, which in the context of things is nuts. I mean, 55 runs for the 10th wicket partnership for Australia, just 11 for India. That might be really, really important coming into the final day. Lyon got ready for 114, so beautiful century from the young man there. Lead of 105. Australia lost Konstas and Khawaja pretty cheaply, but it was a collapse of 4 for 11 in the middle, which we'll talk about in a moment, that put India on top, probably, I think, for the first time in the test. A gritty 70 from Labuschagne means that he's got back-to-back half-centuries. 41 from Cummins, and well, that wagging tail, the 55-run partnership, and the 41 unbeaten runs by Lyon means that, Australia now poised 333 runs ahead. Trying to think about what the next thing I want to talk about is. We've talked about Bumrah, we've talked about that last wicket partnership. One other thing that I was going to say is Rohit's captaincy. I think throughout this series he's come in for quite a bit of flack, both his batting and his captaincy. But today, with Bumrah, who's bowled a lot of overs, he's also had now and again a few injury scares, but he bowled him in really short, sharp spells, and then he would leave him off for a couple of overs and bring him back on again. So he utilised him really well. But I think that also opened the door for Siraj, who I thought bowled the best that he has done all series.
It's a really good description of how it all took place. I felt like his initial spell at 5 overs in this innings was a little short, but then if you look at the way Rohit used him throughout the day, it was a really distinct game plan to use him in short, sharp spells, bring him on the back of a wicket being taken. You've got to take your hat off to him. I thought some of his field placements as well, he showed real creativity, which we had probably... he'd come into some probably criticism, I think, throughout the series for a lack of creativity. Well, I thought he showed it today with some of his field placements. I think the way that he handled Konstas with the third man, it meant Konstas didn't have the lap sweep up or the ramp up his sleeve to start with. I would have liked to have seen point up to Konstas so he couldn't get off strike early and maybe another catcher. But I think the way he used Bumrah in particular was fantastic. And it really kept the Australians on their toes. Every time they lost a wicket, it felt like they were vulnerable to another one. And it paid dividends.
Yeah, Siraj today with the wickets of Khawaja, Steve Smith as well, and I'm trying to think who we got as well, LBW, Marnus Labuschagne in the end. And all of those were either caught behind, bowled, LBW, so really good wickets.
Yeah.
Unluckiest bowler of the day, Akashdeep.
Oh, yes.
I think, again, he passes the bat so often. There was a wonderful stat about the false shot percentage in the first 20 overs of a test match. I think this is one of the highest since, I think New Zealand in 2011 got a 41%er.
Yeah.
But in the first innings, Australia were on 36%, second innings 35%. They were 3 for 137. New Zealand, by contrast, with similar statistics, were, I think, 6 for 60. So It shows you how well the Indians bowled, and perhaps were a tad unlucky.
I thought so. Certainly, Akashdeep was fantastic throughout the initial spell. He could have maybe been a touch fuller. That's the only thing you could say. A lot of balls going past the bat. However, a lot of balls grabbing the edge and falling short of the slip. So he was really unlucky, I thought, and probably the most unlucky in the game so far. Siraj was fantastic with his length. I just thought it was a really well-rounded attack. They got their line and length right, and we must say, yesterday we felt like the wicket was a bit docile. It was really flattening out. They made it look the exact opposite once they hit the ground running today. It was a really impressive performance from India's bowlers.
Now, being unlucky can come in lots of different ways, one of which might be catches not being held.
Ooh,
we saw that a little bit from the young Jaswal. He dropped Khawaja in the slips. He dropped Labuschagne on 46, so before he scored his half century, and then a bat pad on the offside, Cummins as well. And he was very swiftly, I don't know if you saw this, he was removed from that catching position, and KR Rahul went down under the lid. It's a young player. Some of the reactions from the senior players from the Indian side, especially when he dropped Khawaja, Rohit Sharma was very visceral in his reaction, as was Akashdeep, the bowler. Now, is that just emotion playing out and, we're all human, it's allowed to happen? Or do they need to think of a different tactic to try and encourage a very young member of their team?
Yeah, they were quite demonstrative at times. And look, we've seen it from captains all around the world, senior players from all around the world over the years. But you've got to be very careful with young players, I think. You need to make sure that you're helping them get better and not perhaps maybe knocking them even further off their game by getting in their face or being demonstrative out in the ground. And I don't mind them moving the young player from a position, but it probably suggests you may not have quite got the position right in the first place. But you've got to be very careful with how you manage the young players, because you can really knock the wind out of them. And what we saw throughout the day was his catching fell away even further. So, yeah, I think you've got to be very careful with how you manage young players. It was good to see Rishabh Pant actually get over to young Jaiswal and put an arm around him post a couple of those mistakes, because everyone makes them, but there are ways that you can actually suck even more life out of a young player if you get too angry and too visceral.
Lots of good expressions that we saw on the cricket pitch today, and one interesting moment was Sam Konstas. He didn't replicate his heroics from day one. He was out for 8, and the way in which Indians celebrated was Bumrah mimicked, I think, the same celebration that Konstas had pulled out when Virat Kohli had been was out in the first innings. It was a sort of wave both arms aloft at the crowd and egg them on. And then we saw that a bit later in the innings as well. I think Siraj did it when he got a wicket. I quite like this kind of little, I don't know, theatrics and the tete-a-tete. How about you on that one?
No, I love it. I think the more character in the game we see, the better, and I've been pretty strong on that all the way through the series, as you know, Izzy. I love the characters in the game, and it's something that we sort of felt like might have been dying away from professional sport as a whole, but to see these guys showing their character and really getting the crowd involved as well, I love it. It adds drama and it adds character, and that's what we love about sport.
Another moment that I rather enjoyed was about almost towards the end of the day's play on the big screen. It popped up. The crowd could vote for their moment of the day.
Right.
And they had two moments to choose from, one of which was the 200th Test wicket by Bumrah.
Okay.
The other one was Marnus Labuschagne 70. So it'll be interesting to see what percentage did indeed vote for Bumrah, which I think would be the obvious choice. But, and that's actually, I think one thing to say there as well, the crowd has been absolutely fantastic in terms of both the way in which they've received both teams, but also the numbers. I think we're looking at records over 5 days here at the MCG. There were, another 50,000 today, I think, or 40? 40,000
odd,
today.
I think, yeah.
So it's backing up. And tomorrow, Monday, all to play for. We're expecting something huge as well. But there's been a huge percentage of Indians in the crowd. So perhaps Marnus might not get his day in the sun.
Maybe not.
That said, back-to-back 50s. Yes, he was dropped. Everyone gets a bit of luck. We're starting to see Marnus Labuschagne back to his best.
Yeah, look, it's fantastic to see him contributing consistently again. I think 2 scores of 70 in the game, that's going to have his confidence going through the roof, which is so important for the Australian team. We know how important those number 3 and 4 positions are in any order, and to have Steve Smith and also Marnus playing well again. I know Marnus wasn't at his best again today. I felt like he showed signs. He showed periods of his innings where he did have some fluency and his feet were moving again. But like I mentioned earlier, there was an extraordinary amount of seam movement and swing early on in the innings, and I felt like he navigated a lot of that with grit, determination, and he found a way to contribute to this innings, which was so pivotal.
Another interesting bit for Australia, or perhaps a concerning bit for Australia, another batting collapse in the middle order, 4 for 11. It was started, I guess, by Steve Smith. Not much foot movement, throwing his hands at one. Bad batting, good bowling, dicey pitch, bit of both. Good captaincy by Rohit, rotating his bowlers.
Yeah.
Is there any one thing, or was it a combination of all of the above?
Oh, look, I think it was the Bumrah effect again. I think the way that Rohit Sharma marshalled the troops and the way he used his bowlers kept our new batters coming to the crease under enormous pressure, and we know how damaging he's been. Look, I think the Australians will be disappointed that they weren't able to manage a few more of those deliveries a little better, so they'll be having a close look at that. So it's a little bit of everything, but I think Rohit Sharma gave their attack every opportunity by the way that he used his bowlers today, and they attacked the minute there was a new batter at the crease, and they bore the fruit of that venture, and I thought that he deserves a lot of credit for the way he marshalled the troops today.
Now, we're not ones to dwell on misfortune, so we'll do it quickly, but Mitch Marsh, he's not having a great summer with the bat.
No.
I think the worst Aussie bat since Kim Hughes in 1984, fine that summer then. So it's been difficult, especially somebody who's come off the back of such good series in the past 12 months. Is his place in peril going into Sydney?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's disappointing to see because everyone loves Mitch Marsh within that dressing room, and the Australian fans really have grown to love him. I know he feels as though that he's been maligned at times early in his career, but over the last few years, there's no doubt he's been one of the most popular players in the Australian dressing room and from the fans. So, but I do feel like you've got to face the facts. His runs aren't there, and he hasn't been bowling the overs we've probably expected him to this summer. So the Australians will be looking at that position, I think, because it is a long series, and Stark and Cummins have bowled a lot of overs, and you've got to start to think, do we need more overs out of that position at 6? And the facts are at the moment, runs are currency, and he's out of runs at the moment.
One thing we ask every evening is what's going to happen tomorrow, but I feel today is even more pertinent because we're going into that final day. Highest Test innings from Nathan Lyon.
Oh, yes.
Could he play a real pivotal day with the ball tomorrow? And what will that do? Will that batting effort help him, or will he be knackered as a result of it? What's it going to do for him?
I'll tell you what, we quite often talk about all-rounders and how important one side of their game can be for the other. And Nathan Lyon, didn't he put on a show with the bat this afternoon? So I'm really confident that'll seep into his bowling game, and he'll have a real day out tomorrow. But it is such a great test match, this one. It is ebbed and flowed all the way through, and to see the way this afternoon's session went, you can only imagine tomorrow's going to have a few twists. So I honestly cannot wait for tomorrow's game. I'm super excited.
So weather's set fair. We've got all 4 possibilities still on the table: wins, losses, draws. Tied tests of 1987, I think, Calcutta. These two sides, they've done it before. They could do it again. Interesting statistics. India's highest fourth innings successful chases. They've only had 3 beyond 300. The moment Australia lead by 333. Of course, one of those was the famous Gabba 329 in 2021. So they've gone past that now, Australia. The only 2 beyond that, Chennai in 387 in 2008 against England, so home territory, and then Port of Spain 406 against the West Indies in 1976, which was a fair old effort.
Yeah.
So it looks, and then I think there's other statistics as well about successful chases in the MCG, and put it this way, very few and far between in the modern era go beyond 300. Should Australia be declaring overnight?
I don't think they will. I think they'll come out and have a bat in the morning. They'll have a number in mind that would be the ideal number. Obviously, they're well ahead of where they may have thought they were going to get to, but they'll have a number in their mind. I think they'd like 350 if they could get it. It looks like it's still a pretty good batting surface once you get set. We've seen the damaging style of Nitish Reddy and how quickly he can score. Jaiswal if he gets going. So they'll definitely make sure that they have the whip hand and that they're the best chance to win. So they'll try and get up towards 350, I think.
I find it absolutely extraordinary that we're standing here at the end of the day's play saying that Australia are looking for a 350 lead, considering that Scott Boland walked out as the 11th man with a lead of only 278, or only, but it was 278, and now they're looking at making 75 on it.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. And that's what Test cricket does.
Oh,
so yeah,
amazing.
really interesting to see. I reckon we'll see them both walk out tomorrow to have a little last hurrah.
Oh, I think so too.
Bit of a thrash of the bat and
That's
then send India in. And how India approach it will be really, really interesting. And we'll be back here, of course, for that tomorrow. So we'll go now to our secret cricket club questions. John asks, here we go. Highest chase at the G this century is 231. So he's got the statistics for us. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Why don't I feel safe? Question mark. And I'm assuming, John, that you are an Australian. Why doesn't he feel safe?
The reason he doesn't feel safe is we've felt so safe at the Gabba for a long period of time, and then India went out and chased an enormous total on the last day against Australia, last time over in Australian conditions. So I think that's why, John, and rightly so. I think this is an enormously talented Indian lineup. They bat very deep. They've got some really talented all-rounders in the lower order. So once the ball loses a bit of its edge, those guys, if they're allowed to get at a tiring Australian lineup late in the day, they'll be right in this chase. So that's why.
And I think I would add to that our knees, and this is from many, many years watching England, and the way they chase as well, is that you almost have to disregard some of the records from the past eras, because the nature of the pitches, the nature of cricket, the way the dynamism in which they play nowadays, it's almost like every series, every year we're seeing records being broken, and I think that unsettling feeling is going to persevere for some time to come.
Oh, for sure, absolutely, and I think that Gabba game in particular is the modern version of why we're feeling that this is such an even contest.
Nick asks, and wow, this is interesting considering we saw him with bat in hand today, is Scott Boland God in disguise?
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, it's just a matter of time before the statue's just over here to my left. So, look, I think the way that he performs every opportunity he gets, and particularly on Boxing Day, I just think you've got to just hold him in that higher regard. I'm not sure everyone thinks he's a god, but certainly he is held in the highest regard possible, and it's quite incredible that he hasn't played more Test cricket than he has.
I reckon there's a few around Victoria that thinks he's a god. Brenton asks, does Mitch Marsh play in the Sydney Test?
Look, I feel that his position is probably on. In real jeopardy now. The fact that he's struggled so severely with the bat and hasn't bowled the overs that we were probably hoping he would throughout the series. I think he's in real jeopardy. I can't tell you whether he's in or out, but I think he's in real trouble.
There you go. I had it here first. Lucky asks, Khawaja looks unconvincing at the top, despite his 50 earlier, the first innings I think it was. Does he last until the Ashes? Goodness, that's a long look forward.
Usman Khawaja. Look, he's also getting towards the back end of his career. We know that. And he played really well in that first innings. I think a lot of it depends on how this next Test match goes in Sydney. I think whether he gets the choice or not, I don't really know. But certainly Sri Lanka, they'll feel like he's got the experience to go over there and play well and hopefully help them win that Test match. So I think he plays beyond this series.
I think it might hinge a little bit as well on Australia's prospects going into the World Test Championship final. If they need to win those 2 Test matches in Sri Lanka to get there, they'll probably bring as experienced a side as possible, I'd imagine. But if that's out of the equation, then you might think about blooding in new
really
batters, etc. It'll be interesting to see. I have a feeling we might see the end of Khawaja this series.
Okay.
But that's my gut feeling.
Yep.
But I don't think he'll be the only one either.
No, I think the Test Championship is a really good point.
Yeah, and it really does throw everything into context. Now, this is a question I was not expecting. Roy asks, does Glenn Maxwell get a look into this side, given the SCG is going to spin more and the upcoming Sri Lanka tour?
He had a really unlucky hamstring injury on the eve of some Shield cricket he was looking to play. And
About a month ago, wasn't it?
And I think that really set him back. So, look, I don't think he gets a look in either this next Test match or in Sri Lanka on the back of just missing those games that he desperately needed.
So, yeah, no Glenn Maxwell, but good question. Could he be
That's
on
a
the
great
plane
question because I was hoping he'd play those Shield games and get himself an opportunity because I think he's got the game and the assets needed for Sri Lanka.
And the other dimension of that as well is that if Australia are looking for an all-rounder to replace Mitch Marsh, I guess your brain immediately goes to, what seeming all-rounder is going to be there? Is it like a Sean Abbott?
Here in
Carlo
Australia
Carter?
in particular, yeah.
But actually you started thinking, well, maybe it could be a spinning all-rounder.
Especially over in Sri Lanka, 100%.
But the caveat to that, I'd say, is that spin has not played a great deal in this series so far. And even if the SCG is over history a spinning pitch, I'd be surprised if they'd bring in another spinner into the starting 11. Final question then, Tyler asks, and we're back to the big man himself. How many is Boland taking tomorrow on this pitch?
Barrel Boland. Let's think. I think he's going to take 4 for 36. Oof. There you go. You've got it. Right on the dollar.
Not a fiver. Not a fiver to the big man.
4 for 36. 3 and 4, 7 for the Test.
Write it down, and we'll have an answer for you at this time tomorrow evening. When we'll be back with the Willow Talk Extras podcast at the end of this Test match. It's been intriguing once again. I'm Izzy Westbury, Carl Ferguson. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for watching the Willow Talk podcast on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't have to miss an episode wherever you are. And while you're at it, check out these videos up here. They're mostly good.